this time.
What's Gucci? All right, I'm just waiting for these two top in chat. I'm gonna message them right now to see what's good. Hey, bud, how's everything going for you? I can't hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Hmm.
Check to see if you're on mute. You should not be. I made it so everyone that comes in.
No, I'm
Wait,
not
hold
on
on.
mute.
It might be my computer. Hold on. I think it's me. What's up?
Can
I can hear you now.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, that was me. My actual computer was on mute.
Oh, okay.
How's everything, bud?
Oh, pretty good. Just got off work like 30 minutes ago.
God bless it. Let me check on Linda real quick to see if she is here.
Okay.
What do you do?
I'm a physical therapist.
That's
So,
cool as
yeah.
fuck. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I work at a hospital, and I also work at a nursing home.
Dope. How did you get set up with both? Or did you just apply to two different jobs?
Well, so one is a part-time, one is what we call as needed. So it's
Okay.
basically if they need me, I
You're on
show
call.
up. Yeah, on call. There we go. Basically, I didn't take like a full-time job because I still needed my freedom.
I
I still
feel
needed
that.
my flexibility. With a full-time job, I kind of lose on that. So
I dig.
this allows me to have time for my writing, or other endeavors.
Everything that you're working on. I feel that right now. I'm just a I lost my job back when COVID got started. So I've been a stay-at-home dad. It's been awesome though. I
Oh,
hated
really?
I
Oh,
hated my
okay.
job. I absolutely hated my job. Hey Linda, how you doing? Assalamu alaikum.
Hi, I'm fine. How are you? Alaikum
Hello.
assalam.
Wonderful. Good to see you, bud.
Hello,
Hello,
Linda.
Omar.
Can you believe with that voice that she's a black belt?
Oh my
Isn't that the
gosh.
most unsuspecting like threat in the world?
Yeah.
She has a picture on her page where she's holding like two side daggers. And just hearing her speak just now, I'm like, there's no way on God's green earth that.
Well, I hope nobody tries her. They're in
God
for a
bless.
surprise.
In this discussion, we're cool. God bless you, Linda. Pleasure to be talking with you.
When my son was in high school, I went to meet his teachers one night, and his science teacher just stared at me with his mouth dropped open. He wouldn't say anything. And then the next day he told my son, "You tell your mother I'm sorry I couldn't speak, but the way you described her, I thought she was some kind of Amazon warrior."
I mean, after just seeing the new Wonder Woman movie, like you would still be the archetype for that Amazonian warrior. If you two want to just
Because
introduce,
I was
oh no, go ahead.
I was in the Air National Guard at the time. I served 13 years in the military
Nice.
and
Oh,
was a
wow.
black belt. So I don't know what he was expecting, but it wasn't me.
I think that might be something that we all get into as we share like our stories. Is that just I don't know, in a different retrospective, that's kind of something I deal with all the time, that people kind of hear about the things that I've done, or they might hear me talk over the phone or something, but then when they see me in person, they're like, what the hell? Like you were the last thing that I expected before me when I had like this idea in mind. So I definitely have gone through that as well. If you two just want to introduce yourselves real quick,
Linda can go first.
please.
Well, I'm just a hillbilly. I was born and raised in the foothills of the North Carolina mountains. I grew up. I was born in 1949. I grew up without plumbing or electricity. My grandma was a moonshiner, and we we raised our own food when I was growing up. We grew our own crops in the spring and summer, and then in the fall we always had a pig we raised every year to butcher, and the meat from the pig kept us through the winter. So we lived
Wow.
very simple lives, and so I'm a generation that's dying out, I guess.
I dig that, but I still feel like a lot of people in my generation, the millennials, can learn a lot from that because that's something that we've definitely abandoned. That would right now for a lot of people, like, you know, I grow my own food now, and I do that because I just see the benefits of it. But a lot of people would never even consider growing their own food, having a garden, owning animals that aren't just a pet, but to, I guess, slaughter eventually. Um, Linda, check your Wi-Fi connection because it looks like you disconnected. That's a great smile though. I wish I could get a snapshot. Are you still there, Omar?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, if you want to take the floor real quick, feel free, bud.
All right, so I'm Omar Gonzalez. So like Linda, I also served in the military for 5 years.
Congratulations.
Served under honorable conditions. My contract ended, and so I just went to school, and then thankfully I got accepted into the school's physical therapy program, and so I just recently graduated May of 2020. So
Congratulations.
yeah, and so I've been doing that. I've been working as a physical therapist, real recently, and also I launched my book.
I see, and
Like
I'm hearing great things about the book as well. I'm hearing like great things in positive ways, but I've also heard a little bit about what the book is about. And I'm like, holy crap, this guy's been through some shit. You're
yeah,
definitely a survivor.
it's just something that I just wanted to put out there. Not necessarily because I want the world to know about me. I just want people to know the importance of not going through stuff alone.
Exactly.
Like the
Do you
importance
feel
of
like
reaching out.
I haven't gotten a chance to read the book yet? You said that you're shipping it, which thank you once again. Like that's incredible. That's the first time anyone's done that in my entire career as an author.
No, hey,
Seriously.
like I said, it's as simple as the person just wanting the book. Hey,
Absolutely.
gotcha. Let me get an address.
Got you. But with that, I've only heard like, but so much about it. I got introduced to you through Tony Dottie, I think Anthony Rosa and Christy Main. I think you're part of that the summit that they're putting together.
Yeah, I'm gonna be attending that because it looks like they're gonna be giving out a lot of good information at that event.
100%. I just wanted to plug it real quick, just so like people know, this is what it's about. Like I got introduced to you just through a connection, and now we
Yeah.
get to sit down and talk and share our journey. The two Omars. Hopefully, Linda figures out what's on with her Wi-Fi. So if I look a little distracted, it's
No,
because
no,
I'm
it's
trying
all right.
to see what
Figure it
happened
out, and yeah.
exactly. So what would you say that your book is about, and what made you want to write a book to it? I guess one question at a time. What would you say that the book is primarily about?
It's primarily about basically it's family coming together because we realized that we were at a point where it was going to either break us or make us. We were either going to move on from that point, as individuals, or we were going to move on from that point as a family, like how a family is supposed to be. So it shows the importance of like letting bygones be bygones, forgiveness, finding it in yourself to forgive somebody, and then just moving on, and pretty much I talk about my relationship with my mother. I talk about the relationship with my brother, and I also have a couple of fun stories in there, like because growing up, with when you're hanging out with some friends and you're doing dumb stuff, you're gonna have some events that are like fun. But it's just a look at my childhood, basically my childhood to teenage years, giving you a look at, where I started and, significant things that I find significant that occurred, during those years.
I feel that. So my second question, and just like ideas in my head, because I don't really have a super strict format for this show. It's just conversation. But
Yeah.
why a book instead of, because it seems like you're doing a lot of podcasts. It seems that you're networking with a lot of the right people that to get your story out in any type of format. Were you always a really strong writer, or was like, did a book just seem like the only way to encapsulate the experience?
So how it started was in my psychology class. That's how it started.
Nice.
So my psychology professor, she was teaching us these behavioral concepts, right? Basically, like why we do what we do, or why things become a habit, where
Word.
things originated. So she would give us it was like a bunch of concepts, and so 1 week she would teach us one, and then she would assign us like, hey, okay, now that I've taught you this behavioral concept, I want you to go apply it in your life, either past or present, think about anything that might be going on that might be relevant with that behavioral concept. So
Absolutely.
I would take it, and basically I looked, back. I would think about some things, some events, and I was like, well, you know what? I'm thinking about this event that happened in the past, and it makes sense. It makes sense with this behavioral concept. So you know what? I'm going to write about it, and I'm going to make it relate. I'm going to make it make sense. And yeah, it was just me, doing assignments, homework assignments. That's how it started. And then with each assignment that I would turn in, she would come back to me, like, hey, can you stick around after class? And at first, I was like, whoa, like, am I in trouble? Like, I hope I didn't, write something bad, but
Maybe
no,
she
she
thought you
was
were a
like,
handsome guy. I don't know.
so she, no, she just told me like, hey, like these are some great writings. Like, every time you turn in an assignment, it's like I'm going on a journey. Like when I read your assignment, it's like you're telling a story. And like, so we got to the end of the semester, and she gave me the stack of the assignments, and she's like, hey, whatever you do, don't destroy these, don't throw them away, keep them, and do something with them. Either look into book writing, or I don't know what, but please do not destroy these. And thankfully at the time, my public speaking professor, she was in the book world, like
Yeah.
kind of. She did professional editing and all that. And so I reached out to her, and I had her look at them. And I was like, hey, what do you think? Do you think I could do something with this? And she also was like, yes, please, yeah, don't, not exactly in that form, like an assignment paper, but
Yeah.
like she's the one who like kind of introduced me to like writing poetry or like short stories. So she told me like, hey, try your hand at that. Try transforming that assignment paper into either a poem or a short story. And so I did that. And I came up with approximately like 30 writings.
Nice.
And I had to put that like on the back burner, because then I got accepted to PT school. And from what I heard from other students, that were in the program or that graduated, they were like, hey, when you're in the PT school, that's it. That's your life. Like it's going to be nothing but studying,
Yeah.
studying,
Takes up all
and
your time.
studying.
Yeah.
And so, I really didn't have time to pick that back up, get the book together. So it was when I graduated, I said, you know what, I made it. I put it on my planner. I was like, hey, as soon as I graduate, I'm gonna look into, getting this book together. So I graduated in May. Um, I needed to, because of the whole COVID thing that was going on. I got caught in that, because I had a few close friends and family members,
Yeah.
get COVID. And
Likewise.
so, I was dealing with a lot of stress. So I kind of had to like, once again, keep it in the background. But as soon as August hit, as soon as, I had the time to do it, there was no more stress. There was no more worry or anything. Everybody was good to go. I did the research. I looked up. I talked to. I did everything I had to do, and end of August, I got it out there. The Phantom Struggle.
Absolutely.
I
And I love the
yeah.
way that you're getting it out too, because it seems like you're starting out as if you had a lot of the right voices in your head already. I run a collective, and I'll introduce you to the collective after this. But I run a collective of artists, and it seems like people are all over the place with how they manage their book, how they produce their book, how they publish their book, how they're distributing their book. And you seem like you're already at that higher level point of doing things, that there's another author. I'm going to say a little bit about myself, like maybe after this, but it's just a guy I discovered. I'm trying to remember his name. Is like Issa Musbarak or something like that. He's like Jersey local, but he's inside of Little Boho bookstore. They do like little local events. He was their
Oh,
featured
okay.
author. Yeah, definitely check them out. He was their featured artist or author. I keep saying artist because I consider authorship part of artistry, but I
Yeah.
mean authors when I say that this is a show basically for readers and writers and authors. But just like that, like he was already acting at such a high professional level with his work. Was it the networks that you've met? Was it the things that you learned in the military or in college that made you present this book at such a high professional level? Or was it just a personal dedication to self to have it released at? Because the book cover looks amazing. You're distributing the book for free, which means that you've already bought a set amount of copies, and that's what you should be doing.
Oh,
Um,
well. I didn't buy them.
okay.
Thankfully, somebody made a generous purchase, very generous,
Oh, awesome.
and they kept one copy, left me with the rest. So, what I decided to do was just I'm gonna leave what I have on Amazon and
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble there for, like, I guess folks who, like, stumble into the book. And what I'm gonna do with the bunch that I have here, like I said, if I meet somebody new like you, hey, do
Word.
you want a book?
Dude, absolutely.
As simple as that. If I reconnect with somebody from my past, they ask me, hey man, you think I can have a book? Or I ask them, hey, would you like a book? That's how it's been happening so far, because like I said, it's like I'm not gonna say, hey, it was nice meeting with you, or nice reconnecting with you,
And then we're just
and
leaving it
now
like that.
go buy my book. No, it's like, hey, here you go, man. If you want to know more about me, here you go.
Everything I've
That's
been dealing with in the past. Yeah, I
that's
definitely.
my yeah, that's my origin story right there.
I have a very similar, so I don't really share too much about it, but I feel comfortable enough to share it with you. And I just hope it doesn't sound overly narc. But it was like a very, very similar start to why I became an author. And I was a psychology major. I had a triple major actually in psychology, poli sci, and English. So
Oh,
English and
okay.
psych. No, it was it was a horrible idea. It was a horrible
Oh.
idea. I had a triple major in college, and like I had 22 credit hours every semester. It's like,
Ooh,
yeah, I couldn't, like, I had no
busy.
idea. People kept telling me, but I wasn't at like the emotional maturity yet. I was about 17, going to
Okay.
school in a completely different state. I'm completely by myself, left to my own devices. And I was dealing with a lot of issues with homesickness. I was dealing with a lot of issues, which kind of like, I guess you would say culture shock, because people
Right.
seemed
Yeah.
really nice, but they were just nice because that's how they were raised. It wasn't because they actually liked me. So I
Yeah.
get kind of confused. But I was just thinking today when I was cleaning up my bedroom about a child psychology professor that I had. And great, Linda's back. Hold on. I'm just going to wait for her to come back into the room.
Yeah.
Hey, Linda. Welcome back. But I was thinking about a child psychology professor I had. And this is kind of what I'm sitting with her in like her office hours because around my sophomore year, I just had like a really bad case of depression. My
Mm.
freshman year, I spent all that time trying to get the honor roll, and I did. I was on Dean's List, all that kind of stuff. So it's like I felt this weird kind of pressure because in my earlier life, I was a wrestler. I'm not sure if you were a wrestler, if Anthony was the
Yeah, we
wrestler.
both wrestled on the team.
So you understand like what wrestling is like. Wrestling in high school was my entire life. You know, I
Yeah.
uh, I was third in the state when I was 13. And by the
Oh,
time I was a sophomore in high school, I was like fifth or seventh in the state of New Jersey. So it's like,
wow.
yeah, like definitely.
That's
But
incredible because New Jersey's tough.
it's really, it's one of the, but that's all from the ages of 13 to about 18, that's all I did was wrestle and go to school. So I was in wrestling schools, I was in wrestling camps. I spent my entire summer visiting different universities to wrestle. I never really learned how to to do this, just sit down and socialize with people. Because
Right.
wrestling is also very individualistic. So when I got to college, I had to deal with, and this is kind of what I read about too, in like for the Crown of Nadi in my books, just these kind of characters that are isolated on their own world. They want really badly to interact with other people, to be a part of the human experiment, but it's just for whatever reason in their life experience, they've just never been exposed to society the same way other people have. So I was talking to a child psychology professor who I probably desperately needed to speak to, and I'm sitting in class with her. This is before I have a son or anything. And I'm just like, I just don't find the material interesting. Like, I can't get engaged with this. And like, to think about it, I'm in a class with about 100 different students in a lecture hall with no personal, this is my first time having any personal interaction with her. And it's only because I missed the first 2 months of class because I just haven't,
Oh,
yeah, I was going through like really severe depression during that time.
yeah.
So I'm speaking to professors, I'm speaking to psychologists, I'm speaking to counselors, I'm speaking to therapists. I'm trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with me. Basically, that's my wife and my kid right there. And I'm speaking to the psychologist, not my child psychology professor, because she got fed up with me and she was done. I'm speaking to the actual psychologist after this. I'm like, I pissed this woman off. Like, there's something wrong with me. And
Yeah.
then it was kind of revealed to me that like, no, like society is just kind of fucked up, bro. And it's like you've
Yeah.
kind of gotten protected from that, that you didn't have to directly interact with these things. You didn't have to deal with this. And the way that you're dealing with it is very strong. And it just kind of, every professional that I spoke to was saying the same kind of thing. Like, you're not crazy, but you're seeing how crazy this world is. Like, you are stuck in a university paying $30,000 to sit with over 100 students every single day, and you can't learn. They're telling me like you can't learn that way. It's like,
Yeah.
so it ended up getting to the point where had I continued wrestling into college, I would have probably ended up in the military. I probably would have ended up doing politics. I would have never became an author. But because of my life experience, because of seeing things the way that I did, and because of the professionals I got to speak to, they were like, just leave and become a writer. Because it's like everything else that you want to work on, if you want to go into law school later, if you want to go into politics later in life, that's open to you. But you being able to sit down with these things that you're dealing with and being able to write about them, being able to express them so other people can identify them just as you're going through too, that is far more necessary and far more needed right now than you suffering through college in Ohio for another 2 to 3 years of your life. Because I entered having 5 years, knowing I was going to be in school for 5 years. By the time I reached my sophomore year, junior year, I fucked up so much that, excuse me, 1 second. Sorry, I just had to turn that off. It got into the point where
You were already checked out. Like,
exactly, like there was like I had already achieved, I've already gotten to Dean's List, I already gotten to honor roll, and that had never been accomplished by an out-of-state student before, is what they told me. Like, an out-of-state student has never come to this university and done what you've done before. And then after that, I just burnt out. So I guess I have, yeah, exactly what you said, but a little bit different. And then after that, I just kind of I left about 2014, 2015. I've still been learning. I've still been educating myself. Um, Sorry, if you two want to talk around yourself for a second, this is for a job interview. So
Yeah.
I'm really sorry about this. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Welcome.
No problem.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Hello?
I don't know what happened. My internet just went off all of a sudden. If my
It
son hadn't been
happens.
here, yeah, if my son hadn't been here to help me, I would have never got back on.
Yes, sir.
So Linda, I think I read when we were talking to him on the Facebook comments, and I
Right.
think you said that you wrote a book, but
But
it's more of like a translation of the Quran.
Well, I've written several books, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
this book, A Universal Message Interpreted from the Holy Quran. It's the only version that's rendered at a fifth grade reading level.
people usually are.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
the Quran uses long, complicated sentences, and I felt like it was leaving out the translations were leaving out a group of people, not only children, but a lot of adults don't have high reading levels,
Yeah.
particularly prison inmates. And a lot of people don't read above like fifth or sixth grade level. So and I do have training and experience in writing for children. So I was able to break all those long, complicated sentences into short, simple sentences with simple subject and verb. And
Wow, that's incredible.
yeah, it took me 8 years.
Are you
Oh,
talking about
wow.
when you redid the Quran with your friend from South Africa?
Yeah,
Okay.
Dr. Ahmed Pandor is an Islamic scholar, and he worked with me on it to make sure that it was correct, that the meanings were correct.
Yeah.
When does that come out?
It's out.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it
Wow. Okay.
published last May.
Oh, cool. I've seen this one. I've seen this book.
Okay.
I didn't know that's what it was about, though, but that's awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone's experience so far has been pretty incredible. Linda, you told me something else as well about your childhood or when you were growing up and about kind of the spiritual background of where you first lived versus the religious beliefs that you have now.
Well, I was raised Southern Baptist in a church that had Ku Klux Klan members as deacons and Sunday school teachers. And during the civil rights movement, the traveling preachers came to the church and started, they took verses out of the Bible and twisted them around somehow to where they said, claimed Black people were cursed and they didn't have souls. And I was thinking, then why did they always collect all this money to send missionaries to Africa to save Black tribes? That didn't make a lot of sense. And I just didn't, the stuff I was hearing in church didn't match what I read in the Bible. So as soon as I got old enough to have my driver's license and my own car, I started going to different churches, trying to find a God big enough to embrace everybody, not only different races, but different religions, because it wasn't just white supremacy, but Christian supremacy. Everybody's going to hell except white Christians. And I never believed that, even when I was real little. And I never really found a church that I felt was teaching the right message. But when I read the Quran and it said, God has created us into tribes and nations so that we can get to know each other, not so that we can despise each other.
Absolutely.
And that Muslims, Jews, Christians, and anybody else that lives righteously will be rewarded in heaven. I thought that's what I always believed. So that began my journey to Islam.
That's a beautiful thing.
Wow.
That's absolutely beautiful. That's something that I've been kind of witnessing too, since I was telling Omar, I believe you were there for that part of that too, about when I left university, one of the biggest things in my life that kind of, and this isn't going to be like, oh, for people watching and for Omar, this isn't usually about religion, but I think it's a beautiful topic to discuss with the company that we have right now, is just kind of how spirituality and religion are still one of the biggest factors of our life. If I had that my freshman year, I probably wouldn't have gone through, I would have had a firmer basis of what I believed in there. But like Linda's saying, there is like a major white supremacist. I would say first foremost with that, there's a huge white supremacist Christian ideology that has kind of taken over the American doctrine, taking over American culture to the point where there's no longer a clear story about what's happening. You know, I wasn't until a lot older in my life until I heard stories about freed black men who did not face like a lot of life within slavery. Not to say that slavery is still one of the most horrific things that happened, but for a black person growing up in America, I think it's far more important to hear the voices of people not growing up under that still found religion, that still found wealth, that still started businesses. And because of what Linda's saying, the doctrine, the narrative that's set in place, I meet a lot of people like me that have never heard of Reginald Lewis. They've never heard of even the slave rebellions that happened. They don't have any perspective or voice of slaves or black people fighting back during that time to tell the truth, to have the truth be seen. It's like we're in 2021 and we've been functioning under this kind of false ideology, this false narrative for 250 years. I think Christy was saying it's about 245 years since 1776 when the Constitution was signed and dated. That, yeah, a lot of people, 1949, 1940, was it 49 or 43? Linda, that you were born in, was it 49 or 43?
49.
49. Yeah, even to 1949, 1950, people are still, there's no internet. There's no way to really oppose what an authority figure is telling you or saying. How did you kind of overcome that? Like, if you're stuck around people that view the world differently than you do, and they have the authority, they have the textbooks, they have position, how did you find a way to think something differently? Anything different?
It just didn't make sense to me that God would create a people and then he would curse them because of the color he made them. It didn't make sense.
Exactly.
And, I think there's a difference in the type of hatred that we're seeing now. When I was growing up, it was not so much of a hatred as it was just an attitude that whites belonged in their place and blacks belonged in their place. During the civil rights movement, there was an emergency deacons meeting at the church. My daddy was a deacon. He was well respected because he was a World War II veteran. He was wounded at Iwo Jima. So he was a Marine. So they called him to this emergency deacons meeting to discuss what to do if black people tried to come in the church. They were so afraid that a black person might actually come in that church that they had this emergency meeting. My daddy was also an usher in the church, and he was the first one that spoke, and he says, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk them down the aisle and find them a place to sit. And that was the end of the meeting.
I've had like a very similar issue. Like I said, after I left university, God and God's guidance became the center focus. I no longer had my parents. I no longer had like a syllabus to follow. So God became my guide. I ended up going to, this is a couple years later, I think 2018 or 2000, I think it's 2018, 2019. It's like right after Trump became president. So 2017, 2018. I went to this Episcopal church down in Glassboro, New Jersey. And if you've never been to Glassboro, New Jersey, it looks like it came straight out of the 50s or 60s and it never left. It's like just it's a really old town. A lot of the people that live there are still pretty old. There's a university there, so a lot of newer, fresher ideas and new kids are coming in, and it's keeping the town going. And I think it's probably the center focus of their economy. I'm trying to relate to what you said, Linda. But I started going to the Episcopal church because that became a center focus of my life, is having a church service that had service on Saturday evenings. They celebrate Sabbath. So I needed something for Friday or Saturday, and I visited sometimes on Sunday. But I started just randomly going to the church, and it was the exact same thing that you're talking about. Like, they've never had a real black person that wasn't from the community or didn't grow up with them or didn't grow up. Here's just this random large black man going to your church, kneeling down to pray with you, taking the I just completely taking communion with you, listening to your teachings. But I did hear just kind of their perspective of religion, their perspective of Christianity, some of the lines that they taught in the story. It was a cool perspective to have. But it was just one evening, we were just after service, we're just sitting around, and one of the white women, I'm sorry to put it like that, Linda, I really am, but one of the older white women at the church just struck up a conversation with me, and she was telling me that this is one of the first conversations with a black person she's having in her entire life. This conversation that she was having with me just then under a Trump presidency. And we just kind of had a conversation about how the world has changed, how she thinks it's getting better. But it just kind of like that fear, or I guess you wouldn't say fear. What you said was basically just, it was an ideology. It was a culture. It was an idea that of superior, there's no other ways to put it, but just white supremacy. Like, this is just white people up top, black people up bottom. And she's like, with you and the way that you worship and like your faithfulness to come here, it's just because a lot of people, they claim to be religious, they claim to be spiritual, if you would, today, but they don't practice anything. I'm not saying that to criticize them or not to criticize them. So I feel like religion, it's been used as one of the main points to kind of separate us and divide us. But in that situation, it was a situation for me that helped me gain friends, helped me gain better entry into the church. I didn't really stay at the church too long because I didn't really believe what they believed in, but I still got to connect with these people. And I've just been kind of, I guess, experiencing different ways that different religions believe, visiting different churches from different backgrounds to come and see the commonality of it all. And my father's actually Muslim, so I've gotten to see kind of the mosque and Jumba. Is it Jumba? Jumba? Juma. I've been to a couple Juma services as well. And I think what you're saying like kind of hits the nail on the head for me, that there is that the force itself that we call God, that we call Allah, he is big enough. And this is something that the priest said that back then I kind of got insulted by. He was like, someone was telling a story of how their brother passed away or something, and how we were watching the movie The Shack. If you guys have heard of the movie The Shack. No? It's hard to explain because I never finished the movie. But basically, a guy's like really upset with God, and his daughter's kidnapped and killed, unfortunately, and he can't stop it.
Wow.
And that's a nightmare for any father, any person that loves kids. Like, that's heartbreaking. So he grows up and his heart becomes very calloused and very closed off to God because of this experience that he's gone through. So he ends up meeting God, and God is the woman from Community. And Jesus is this handsome Middle Eastern Latino looking man, and then the Holy Spirit is this young Middle Eastern kind of Indian looking woman. And that's when I kind of like got tuned out to the movie, and I was like, I gotta go home now. Like, but someone said something that they were angry with God because their brother or something passed away. They were an alcoholic, and it's like watching someone suffer for years and years and years, and then they die. And he's like, I'm very angry with God right now. He still comes to church and all that, but he's like, I'm very angry with God. And the priest was saying, I think God has big enough shoulders to handle you being angry at him. And I got so offended. I don't know why I got so offended by that. But looking back at it now and hearing Linda speak, it makes everything just kind of make a lot more sense. But like, there is literally a force out there, whether people believe it or not. There's a force out there that does not care what we call it. It doesn't care if we call it Allah, if we call it God, if we call it Yeshua, if we call it Jehovah. I mean, maybe he does, maybe he does not. I'm not really entirely sure, but he loves all of us. And he's trying to do best for all of us. We try to use like human interference or our personal perspective to throw stones at the kingdom, I guess you would say, to throw stones at his throne to discredit God. But what we're really dealing with is just us, I don't know what you guys think about that.
No, I just I find it interesting hearing Linda's upbringing with Christianity, because it's kind of similar. I had a similar upbringing, not necessarily with the white supremacy, but with what one of you mentioned earlier, the Christian supremacy.
Yeah.
So I was brought up with like that, Christianity was the only way,
Mhm.
and that if you weren't a Christian, it's pretty much damnation for you. And also I was also, like in the same situation where I had questions. I wasn't that typical kid that just, like I guess took it in and whatever.
Yeah.
No, like I had questions, things like, didn't make sense in my head because, growing up, I was reading comic books, I was reading
Mhm.
Superman, X-Men, all that. So like when I have somebody telling me that there's somebody like doing, in miracles or like, fantastical things, like, I'm a child. Remember, I'm a child at this point, so I'm kind of like thinking about it in those terms of like things that I'm seeing in a comic book
These are
or
your
in a
ideas of
cartoon.
miracles. Yeah.
So, I have questions, naturally, but nobody was trying to answer those questions. I would get people get angry at me. Oh, stop asking dumb questions, or just people just they would just wouldn't give me an answer. They just you're a kid. You'll understand it when you're grown up. So I'm like, oh, okay, whatever.
I've had to,
So
I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
I've had to deal with that like so many times in like my spirit. I call it a spiritual pilgrimage at this point because it's really transformed like my perspective of religion, my perfect perspective of God in general. Is that I remember one time specifically, and like I was homeless during this period of time, so I had not like I'm living as close as you could to a godly life as possible. I'm living as close to a tekton like Jesus was as humanly possible, and it's like I'm still getting criticism from people living great. Like they're the ones balancing between the world, balancing between sin and virtue. They're the ones dealing with having to put on two different faces and performances. It's like I'm living life being myself. And I remember I went to this meeting because that's one thing about the benefit of being in a college town, whether you have money or don't have money, is that it's still a college town. So they still have events, they still have speakers, they still have all these resources available to you, whether you go to the university or not. So I went to one of these meetings and there's a pastor speaking, and I'm an author. So I'm an author and it's 2021. You're talking about something that happened 2,000 years ago plus something that if you're talking about the Old Testament, something that happened literally 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. So I'm telling him that in modern day speaking, I think I might be able to reach people a little bit better than this because I'm listening. I'm one of the people that you're attempting to reach. I'm the young generation that you need to continue the church. Even if the church is within us, you need young people there who engaged, who are energetic about religion, who are energetic about worship to continue on your ideology, to continue on Christianity. And he's sitting there staring at me like I have three eyeballs. I'm listening to the Bible every single day at this point. I'm reading the Bible every single day at this point. And it's like I'm met with nothing but like when I talk to, it's a weird thing for me. So I have a lot of friends that are agnostic or atheists, and I'm friends with Daryl Omar, so you're my entry point to religion. As long as I maintain a good relationship with you, you're gonna get me into heaven somehow. Is their kind of ideal? It doesn't work that way, but whatever. I have a lot of friends that kind of have those kind of ideologies because when I like find myself talking to a lot of Christians, it's like they identify themselves as being Christian. Maybe you dealt with this too, Linda, because it's kind of what you were talking about. It's like they call themselves Christians, but their actual practice has nothing to do with the actual religion. It has nothing to do with the actual life that Jesus lived. It has nothing to do with what Jesus actually died for. And if anything, a lot of these religions, like the Episcopals and the Catholics and some of the Southern Baptists, they kind of teach you to not be like Jesus, and they teach you to be like the Romans. They don't teach you to really embody this lifestyle of loving your neighbor and giving yourself fully and wholly to God to follow his pathway for you. It's always this kind of sticking point that you're always brought back to the world. You're always brought back to having to deal with finances and money, and to live entirely for it, live your entire lifestyle for it. You're always down to having to somehow compromise yourself for vanity or for sin instead of just being humble. And it's like the society that we're living in puts us in a standpoint that it was raised by this white Christian, Anglo-Saxon ideals of supremacy. But it's like in 2021, I'm seeing issues with the church, just like I'm seeing issues with the ideals of white supremacy, that these ideologies that kind of held the country together are kind of exactly what's ripping it apart now, because people don't answer your questions when it comes to Christianity, because they don't have, sadly, Mr. Gonzalez, they don't have the answers that you seek. And it's like you asking the questions and you propose, like talking about finances, like talking about money is another big thing that I love to do. It's that you ask people about finances, you ask people basically, how do you get rich? How do you make $1 million? And even though it's the societal norm, it's the societal standards, the societal program, no one has an answer for you. How do I live a life of salvation? How do I get into heaven? No one has an answer for you. They say don't sin, but they have, like, depending what church you go to, there's only 10 commandments. So there's only 10 sins that you can honestly commit. But you go to like some of these institutes, everything that you do to live your life is a sin. Like, I don't know like what happened here. I guess I'm kind of ranting at this point, so I hope someone takes like the floor away from me. But like, I don't really understand what happened with the disconnection here, that you have like just 10 commandments, but now drinking is a sin, smoking weed's a sin. But you have numerous stories in the Bible where people are drinking wine. They're having a great time. They're having a party to celebrate their God, to celebrate their belief in God. And then I feel like you maybe didn't find the answers that you seek because the disconnection happened so long ago with that kind of Crusades era, with this war of breaking all 10 commandments basically to establish religious dominance, that when they did establish this Christian supremacy and Christian dominance, they had already broken every religion. I mean, not every religion, every sin and every vice that they believed in, that there was no longer any religion in place after about the 1600s to begin with. We're just kind of living with people that call themselves Christian, they call themselves spiritual, but they don't really have any real mindset or belief of the supernatural, the paranormal whatsoever. So please, someone take the floor away from me. I've been talking kind of a lot.
I would like to, yeah, Linda, I'm curious.
Don't all talk at once.
Linda, I'm curious. Does Islam, the religion of Islam, do you see sort of stuff like that, like what Omar was just saying, like?
Oh yeah, there's hypocrites in Islam too. But what I wanted to say is there's thousands of names for God because of all the different religions, cultures, and languages. But there's just one God for everybody. And exactly. I think every religion has consonant values of honesty and justice, compassion, charity, love, peace. And we can learn something from all those religions. I think everybody wants to put God in a box and he doesn't fit. No. So we need to share. People of different religions need to share our beliefs and our concepts of God and see, because all truth is God's truth. So we need to find God's truth wherever it is, even if it's in the religion of another or in the religious text of another religion. Most people, non-Muslims, when they write about Islam, they say that Muhammad was the founder of Islam, but that's not what Muslims believe. Muslims believe that when God created humanity, for example, Adam and Eve, he gave humanity a religion, and that religion was complete peace with God through complete submission to him. That was the religion he gave humanity from the beginning of creation. And all the religions, the Arabic word for that submission is Islam. And all the prophets and all the texts that God has given us throughout time have been avenues for getting back to that original religion.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like even it reminded me of two things. The first thing it reminded me of is even when you get into like Freemasonry, and I'm not going to go into a rant about Freemasonry and Ivor. That's not what the show is for, and I don't want the Freemasons or Illuminati tracking me or my emails or nothing. So I'm not going to say anything negative about it. I'm not going to say anything positive about it. But when you get into Freemasonry, when the higher your degrees go up, when you get to like 33 degrees, they start teaching you Islam. You know, you can come into Freemasonry believing you have to believe in any source of higher power, period, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what they believe. My father's a Mason. He's a pretty high ranking Mason. So we ideologically just don't get along all the time. But once you get into higher ranking degrees of Masonry, white Masonry, black Masonry, they teach you Islam. And you remind me of something that happened in college. I believe it was my sophomore year. It was definitely my sophomore year because of where my room was like orientated. But my neighbors that year were having a discussion about, and I was asking them, can you imagine the earth if there was never an arms race? If like you've never, because what you're saying is the truth. It's 1000%. When he created Adam and Eve, he created two servants to hold dominion over the earth. That's something that I believe in, and I was taught that we're all essentially believing the exact same thing. And I've gotten to study different religions to see that as well. Even not exactly the same, because when you get into like Buddhism or you get into like ancient Hindu or Jainist beliefs, people are being given religion for their part of the world. You know, they're not given Jainism and the early Americas, you know. Jainism is for Hindus because of the things and the situations that they're going through. You know, Islam wasn't first delivered to the Africans. The Africans received something completely different. They got the Oshiras. You know, everyone had a different belief to get through their section of the world, essentially. This is at least something I read about in my books. So what you're saying that people need to get out together to just be able to talk about it and discuss it, it's like it's amazing to me that we've had such a massive arms race to the point that all our major, maybe you can attest to this, Omar, that most of our major breakthroughs technology wise are through the military before they're through any other pocket of society. It's to further the advancements of our military before we further the advancements of the people in civilization. We have 5G technology, but we haven't served world hunger. We've found ways to create internet sources and social media pages that can attract 3 billion people, 500 million people, but we haven't found a way to achieve world peace. It's like we can do all these things, but we can't sit down to talk about our belief in God or anything else. That it just kind of blows my mind. You know, we've been able to have bloodshed for all these years over this topic of God, but we've had so few people be able to sit down and just have a civil discussion. Excuse me. I mean, have a civil discussion about it. That just kind of, they could not, to get back to the point that it reminded me of, they could not imagine a world. These are two white kids I'm talking about. They grew up in Ohio. That grew up in kind of like a rural farmland. So they're just, they didn't really have a God. They didn't really have any firm beliefs in morality. They're both gamers. So major part of video games is violence, is a part of just going off of a quest and doing what you will. They could not formulate in their minds whatsoever a world in which there was no arms race. And that's just one of the things that's just kind of, I don't know, just stuck with me. It just kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's we need to get to a point where we stop thinking of ourselves as like, you know, separated by, you know, an ocean or separated by some kind of barrier. Like we just need to think of ourselves as, hey, we're people in this world. And, you know, we're the one common thing we all have is, you know, we need to, you know, survive. We need to, if we have children, you know, take care of our children, you know, make sure that they're, you know, productive members of society, and, you know, so on and so forth, you know. And I don't know, for some reason, you know, we've gotten so far away from that. You know, it's like, oh, so what if something's happening, in Africa. Then let them figure it out. Or so
Yeah,
what if something's happening down in South America? Let them figure it out, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be like, hey, how about we help each other just coexist?
1000%.
We
I agree. Sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you off. Keep going. You're
no,
dropping,
no, I'm done. I'm
dropping
done.
some bombs, man. Like that was great. It's the truth. It's 1000% the truth. It's like we all essentially want, and I think like going back to the idea of the college university, and like what a lot of my generation is discovering now is that college didn't always cost what it currently does today. Like people, there was like a meme going around that like a college tuition bill was literally like $160 for the entire semester, for real, like just 160. And now we're paying like $30,000 per semester. We're paying about $60,000 to $100,000 per semester. And I feel like the goals of society and the goals of like American society specifically, because I've never lived anywhere else. This is the only country I've ever lived in. It's the only country my family's ever lived in. It's like, even if your community that you grew up in, Linda, even if they did have like this fear of, this is just something that always gets to me at the end of the day, is like, even if they did have this belief system and this fear of Black culture and Black somehow raising up against the system or something of that nature, or taking over or something of that nature, wouldn't giving these people homes, giving these people like education, giving these people applicable jobs, treating them like people, like, it's like I feel like sometimes we create the problem by allowing ourselves to live by the fear instead of living by common sense. If that was such a big fear of Black people coming into the church, I understand that people gave Black people in churches too, but simultaneously they were kind of burning the churches down. It's like we're creating, like, I can't say we because I'm not a part of that, but it's like a bigger issue is created by, instead of just focusing upon what Omar is saying, focus upon just creating a world where those needs are met. You have basic good-hearted citizens just walking around everywhere. My father's generation grew up complete. I grew up in the suburbs of Maplewood, New Jersey. My father grew up in Newark, New Jersey during the Crown Heights riots. So, like, his perspective of the universe is seeing that form of racism to the point that it was militarized, seeing the point of racism that when you walk out of your house at 10 p.m., you can be shot dead in the street because there's a curfew in Newark at that time, the biggest city in New Jersey. And I don't know, it's just so weird that just 40 years later, 50 years later, we want to live in America as if we've achieved peace and as we've achieved sanity. And we teach history in a way that, like, we solved racism, but you still have people facing minimum wage slavery every single day. Like, you have people that can't afford to live. Right now, we're living in a pandemic where people at the beginning of the pandemic, I think it was like 340 million people. No, I'm sorry, divide that by 10. I think it was like 34 million people, about a tenth of the population, unemployed and basically facing eviction. And it's like these issues aren't being addressed and they're being covered up, but we can constantly keep talking about how billions upon billions upon billions of dollars are being made, or you see these weird DoorDash commercials. I hope this didn't get too far off the point of what we like came here to originally discuss. This is just kind of things that sit on my mind on a daily basis. So, Linda, you have a lot. I'm sorry, this is gonna be like a hard turn, but I was noticing when I was like kind of getting your images together for this, you have a lot of books out. Do you know the number? Like, how many books do you have published?
One, two.
You
I
have
have
them.
5 plus I have another children's book that that I did for a charity. And I have this book called The Emergence of God that also came out last year,
Nice.
and it's based on emergence theory, which is a scientific theory that everything was created at once
Mhm.
in the time-space continuum, but then each thing emerged as the world needed it. So I have a theory of divine emergence where all the attributes of God existed from before time, but each attribute emerged according to what the world needed at any given time. For example, God has always been the most gracious, the most merciful, the most forgiving, but until humanity sinned, there was no need for his attribute of being forgiving. So his attribute of being the most forgiving emerged with the emergence of sin.
That's amazing. That's
Wow.
that's deep. That's so true too. Like you don't really know if you have a positive relationship with someone sometimes, like a marriage or like a best friendship, until you guys have to actually go through something, you know? I don't know. I'm trying to like keep going. That's like amazing.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
Were you just sitting down one day and you came up with this, or is this like something over the years that you just kept coming back to?
Well, I read a book on the scientific emergence theory,
Mhm.
and then I just started linking it to the divine and started thinking about the attributes of God. And of course, the this part of my book is basically from the Abrahamic scriptures, but it could be further developed to include all religions all over the world and how different attributes of God have been revealed through different religions and through different prophets.
I definitely dig it. Um,
So
it's something you recommended to me as well. So it's definitely something I need to pick up and read. Are there any
Yeah,
kind of
it's the emergence of God and other topics, and the other topics are examples of modern science in the Quran, and I've elaborated on some of the science that has already been connected to the Quran, but I've also discovered some other scientific connections that I'm the only one that's made those connections. And Mary, Mother of Jesus, I've made it kind of a story format, uh, gathering information from not only the Bible and the Quran, but some of the lost books of the Bible.
doing the
And
Apocrypha?
yeah, there's books that the Catholic Church threw out and kept
13
hidden for
books they removed.
centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when nature testifies, in Islam we believe that on the day of judgment, nature will testify against humanity for all the crimes we've done to nature and to the animals. So as a species, we have a lot of blame to share.
I just literally, during this week, someone just said something exactly like that. That God's basically done dealing with humanity, and now God's going to take this side of nature. That's amazing. That's something that I don't know. Give me 1 second. I got to show you guys.
Okay.
Linda, I might have to look into your books because I've always been very curious about the religion of Islam. Like that's just one religion that I don't know, I guess just
It
I've never
eludes
really
us.
had the chance to really learn about it, and thankfully growing up, I didn't accept like the things that were being told to me, about Islam.
Yeah.
It just sounded to me like, a bunch of people that were angry.
We're
So
trying to
It's
manipulate a story for their own benefit.
it's
yeah,
I think the church sees Islam as competition.
And I shouldn't. One thing that you stated that just kind of blew my mind because I was thinking is like with Islam, I'm not gonna. Oh God, I don't want to say Islam versus Christianity because that makes me a hypocrite for what I literally just said. But one of the things I notice in Islam that I don't notice in Christianity is that in Christianity, Christians, I would say Christians feel like they're in competition with everything, and I think that's one of the major reasons why the church is. They feel as if they're under attack, but in reality, they're just failing to adapt. Is that in Islam, you have a lot of Muslim scholars, period. You have a lot of Muslim scholars in poetry and literature and science, within mathematics, within making brave discoveries. You even have a lot of Sufi Muslims who take more of a Gnostic scientific path in obedience to God, not doing anything that's going to hurt humanity. But they discover and they experiment with some of the more, I guess, occult or archaic type of like ideologies, where in America and American Christianity, American Christians don't really believe in science. They don't necessarily believe, they feel like public education is distancing people from the church. And it's basically a lot of things that could help people. You know, in biology, we learn about evolution, we learn about there's something that specifically came up, but this is like years ago that I'm like trying to remember it from, so the details are like very unclear. But basically that's just kind of my point, is that we're taught in America that there's some kind of animosity between Christianity and Islam, but we're also taught that there's, like Omar was saying, I had preachers and pastors tell me that even Marvel Comics is some kind of occult, like satanic worship practice, instead of it just being superheroes. That if you saw the new like Infinity Wars movies, they take a lot of symbolism from religion in order to tell their story as well, to make it seem that there's some kind of competition. It just doesn't make, I mean, I see it and I agree with what you're saying, that there is this kind of like advertised or marketed animosity between Christianity and Islam, but it doesn't make any like real sense to me why it even exists to begin with, because Islam, I don't know, again, like there's just so many factors of Islam, not that it's better than one or the other, but it just seems to be a lot more inclusive than Christianity is. Long to short. Sorry that I tried to like trying to get that idea. It was just so difficult.
Yeah, Quran says Muslims and anyone else that believes in God and lives righteously will be rewarded in heaven. But then a lot of Muslims disregard that verse of scripture and want to try to say that only Muslims will go to heaven. I say I left Christianity because of that attitude, so I'm not going to adopt it in Islam.
It seems to be a common practice with every, and I would even say something I've noticed too is that when you get to like the more devout that somebody is, that's when they're able to have conversations with people from other like belief systems and ideologies. You have a lot of half believers, that you have a lot of Christians, sadly, that haven't read the Bible for themselves. They've been going to church every Sunday since they were a child. They've never read the Bible for themselves. If you've been to a Christian church before, they don't read like long stretches and sections. This isn't a criticism upon Christianity at all either, for anyone listening, is that they don't read long stretches and sections of the Bible. They cherry pick one sentence and then they go to another chapter of the Bible about 5 pages later or 5 chapters later, written like 50 years, 500 years apart at times. And it's just, I don't know, it just makes it really confusing when people have any of those belief systems that, and they view it so strongly, that I find myself more facing kind of criticism or facing judgment or facing arguments with people that don't really know what's in the Bible versus people that actually understand what's inside the Bible and then are aware that other people view other things as well. So I feel like it's sadly a lot of the less educated Christians and some of the less educated Muslims that have those kind of beliefs and that feel that strongly about the matter. And when I do get to talk to people that are a little higher in their faith, that's when we're able to reach discussions about world peace and finding a way to kind of bridge the gap between the religions and ideologies, because it is, at the end of the day, the same exact God. Do you have any other ideas on the topic, Linda or Omar, before I talk about myself again? Do you have a copy of your book with you as well, Omar?
I can grab it.
Grab it.
Hold on.
I'll give you a second. Because I like to do that real quick so we can each get a time to just talk about what we're working on, what people can look out for, and then I'll let you guys enjoy your Sunday with your family. Do you have anything else that you want to say about the emergence of God as well, Linda?
Well, I was going over the topics, and
Please go.
after when nature testifies, there was a response to suffering. You know, I think it was in the 70s, there was a book called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And I read that book. It was written by a rabbi. And his conclusion was God created the world, but then he lost control of it, and he's as helpless as we are. And that's not what
this is very accurate.
that's not the way I see it. And the Quran explains why bad things happen to good people, and I've put that into a topic in my book.
Can you give us
another
a idea?
Another topic was a compassionate approach to gender complexities. I just see too much hate about LGBTQ plus issues, and that hate doesn't belong in any religion. So I brought logic and compassion to covering those issues. And then the last topic is the Islamic view of hell. Don't believe Dante's Inferno.
Oh my gosh.
We're covering everything.
The Islamic view of hell is quite a bit different from Dante's Inferno, because in Islam, hell is not so much a place of damnation and eternal punishment. It's an existence in which a person becomes purified, and the similes of hell about fire and burning, it's all about it's a symbolic type of burning that burns away all the evil in a person until he or she becomes repentant. And Islam teaches that eventually every person will repent and turn to God and be forgiven, and hell will be empty.
So that's a similar belief in Catholicism and in Christianity as well. That's self-consecration. That people have like this misconception that Jesus died for their sins so they can sin and they can do whatever they want. But the reality is that you have to go through that pathway of self-consecration, where repentance isn't just saying I'm sorry, atonement isn't just apologizing. You have to turn away from the sin entirely, and you got to fix and change your life. You can't just, I'm sorry for something, I'm just going to keep doing the exact same thing I apologize for. I like that perspective, that you have to actually be self-consecrated, which is the same as like, I think consecration literally means like set yourself on fire basically, or to be burning alive basically, to find that pathway of purity.
Well, the Quran says that to the sinner, to the unforgiven sinner, hell will be a mother. And you know, Jesus taught to be born again. So we're either going to be born again in this life or in the next life. So in hell, you get a chance to be born again.
Wow.
I like that. That explains a lot of the difficulties, what good things happen to bad people, like you were saying. That, I don't know, one of the biggest things I feel like I'm dealing with now is dealing with cynical people versus optimistic people. And I have a kind of personal perspective. This isn't like a religious ideology. This is just my personal belief system, is that we deal with heaven and earth. I mean, heaven and hell while we're living on earth. That we always have our spirit, we always have our soul. But a lot of people are dealing with that pathway, like you're saying. They're dealing with hell right now, but I don't think that they're dealing with a bad situation in order for them to just feel bad, or for them to just feel cursed, or to just feel like God's against them. I think it is that kind of pathway that you're going through this to make you either a stronger person, or for you to change your habits that are bringing about this situation so that you can live a better life, you know? People don't have to feel stuck within their sin or feel stuck within their environment. So I think we're all three people that have overcome our environment, that have overcome what instinctually, whatever it was that was holding us back, to achieve the success that we have now, and to get our books out, to finish physical therapy school. And that's incredible. And to be one of the coolest women that are walking the planet, like ever. Like seriously. Would you like to show your book real quick, Omar?
Yeah, so here it is, The Phantom Struggle,
That's beautiful.
Memoirs of a Life When Struggling. It's, as you can see, it's not a big thick book. I actually wrote it like that way, for it to be a quick read. You get done with the first chapter and you want to read the next, and then, oh wow, I finished the book. So
Treat, yeah.
I hope when you get your copy that you enjoy it, and you can just learn more about where I come from.
I do
And
book review. Sorry, I'm like such a bad habit of cutting people off.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just really short. I was gonna say I do book reviews as well. So Linda's book, Emergence of God, is actually on my reading list already. So I will be reading yours as well, and I will give you a review.
Thank you. And yeah, Linda, I'm gonna be looking into getting that book as well. Probably a couple of your books, because like I said, I've always wanted to learn more. That way I can at least have knowledge about Islam. I've never been one to speak bad about it. Well, first of all, I'm not one to speak bad about anything I don't know anything about. You know what I mean? Like if I don't know about anything about something, I'm just not gonna say anything.
That's good.
Or I'll just say that, hey, I don't know enough. But I don't know, I've always had a curiosity. I've always wanted to learn more about Islam. So I feel fortunate, and I'm so grateful for you having invited me on here for me to have met Linda and learn about her books, because now I'm going to be looking into purchasing her books.
That's why I wanted you both on. If you had something to say, Linda, go ahead.
I was just going to mention my book, Memoirs of a Hillbilly Muslim. It tells my journey to Islam, and it also every chapter it's an excerpt from my life, and then how it relates to a verse in the Quran, how I interpreted points in my life to verses in the Quran.
Wow,
Beautiful.
incredible.
That's actually the book that I first I met Linda with. Was I had a different website back then. I found her page somewhere. I was like, "Can I please advertise your book for you?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." So this is I think I've known you for about a year now, or maybe two. I think it's only been a year. So I don't remember. Was it a year or 2 years? Did I meet you in 2019?
I think a little less than a year, actually.
Okay. I was staying with my grandma around that time. But yeah, I just see this book online, and I was like, I wanted to start an online bookstore, but I knew a little bit about Linda's background, and what I heard from your background, I was like, these two people really need to meet. Because it's like, I don't know, people have such like a weird perspective of Islam. They have such a weird perspective of white people. They have such a weird perspective of black people. They have such a weird perspective of the Latinx community as a whole. And it's like, I just wanted this to be one of the conversations that bridges the gaps. And like I was telling Omar, like we create more allies by doing this instead of having so much of that disparity. Like I don't know. It's just a lot of the way other people think is just, it blows my mind sometimes that some of the things and mindsets they have about immigration, that they have about Latinos in this community. It's like, if this was originally all Mexico, like most of America used to be Mexico, how do you have any negative connotations or perceptions of people coming back on a land that was originally theirs because of some weird bastardized beliefs in finances and real estate that takes that away from people? How do you have ideas and mindsets about, like you were saying with Islam, that I was in third grade when 9/11 happened. I knew nothing about Islam. I knew nothing about Muslim people. I hate to say this, but I was in third grade. I didn't really even have a perception that there was a world outside of America all the way out there. So it's like I kind of grew up with those two competing ideologies of immigration, the ideas of Islam, and especially with Trump's presidency, when you had like the scare with Syrians coming into the country, people from Pakistan coming into the country. And it's like, do you honestly believe that if someone's coming from Syria to America that they freaking hate it? Like, it didn't make any sense. So I just love that. I'm really happy that you two both came on to, you guys are both normal freaking people that are just living their lives, And that's it. That's
Uh,
everyone. In my mindset, that's what everyone is. Everyone's just a person trying to live. You're in physical therapy. You're trying to help people. You're trying to help people overcome pain. Like that's a beautiful freaking thing. Linda is like one of our next great scholars, or she's one of the current great scholars. And if you see, if you add Linda after, oh my God, oh my Gonzalez, you have to add Linda
I'm
after
just
this.
a hillbilly.
You're
I'm
not.
just a hillbilly. That's
Like
all
you
I
have to look
claim.
at the comments on some of Linda's like what Linda's she has a huge following. She's being very humble right now, but Linda has a huge following, and her page has so many discussions and debates and like I think a month or two ago she was saying how she has to get rid of some of the people on her friends list because they just everyone wants to talk about these topics, but they don't want to talk about these topics correctly. They want to assume so many things about the other side. And if we just spoke from our perspective, we just spoke about what we know, we can be
or
educated about everything else. Go ahead, please,
or
please.
just have have it in you to accept that you don't know enough. Because
Absolutely.
I believe we're in a place right now in society where like nobody wants to be wrong.
Oh my
E-
God.
even even if like you don't have the knowledge to prove that you're correct, like you just want to be right. You know what I'm saying? It's like no, like have the humility to say, hey, I don't know, so I'm not gonna speak, or I'm just not gonna say anything that like puts off this aura of like, oh, I know what I'm talking about, even though I don't. And it's like, no, how about we get back to a place where we can have a discussion, a civil discussion, where nobody necessarily has to be right, nobody necessarily has to be wrong. We're just
Learning.
we're trading ideas, we're learning from each other. You know what I'm saying? But
Absolutely.
right now it's I don't know. I don't know when we're gonna get over this. I hope we do soon. Right now we're at this, me versus you. If you're not with me, you're against me, and I don't know. I don't know why we're where we're at that place, but I hope we, with things like what we're doing right now,
Yeah.
you invited Linda and I onto your show. Hopefully this is a step forward into that direction where, people from different backgrounds, religious beliefs, we can come together and just have a wholesome and peaceful conversation about life.
And I'm loving like 1000%, man. And it's like that was one of the number one things within like the American college system I was noticing is that people are afraid to raise their hand. They're afraid to ask questions. Like they'll wait. Like seriously though, like we seriously wait until after the class is over, after the semester is over, after office hours are over to say that I did not learn anything. That one of the biggest, if you guys have ever heard of the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, because this is all kind of going into what my books are about. Um, I'm sorry. He criticizes like the American school system, yeah, but with good reason and with good point. It's like we're raising kids to be like that. We're raising kids not to question authority and it's not even necessarily to question authority negatively. You can ask questions exactly what you're saying about. If you simply do not understand something, you need to be able and be in an environment where you can speak up and say, I don't understand that. And it makes it
Yeah.
really hard when you have, I'm not a know it all. I'm not a person who thinks that they know it all, but I get classified as such as much. But I have a lot of conversations like these with people from completely different backgrounds from me, people that with lives that I would have never in 1,000 years had the chance to live through your shoes or through Linda's shoes. So that's one of the strong reasons there. And people kind of like, they don't want to talk. They don't want to discuss. They don't want to share ideas. Not everybody. That's not my point of perspective. But it makes it really hard when like you feel like you do know what you're talking about. You feel like you might have solutions for society because there's so many people out there, so many of the fake gurus, so many of these people that make it in like a weekend or they make it in a month. And now they're trying to give people advice, like financially speaking, they try to give people financial advice how to start the next internet empire based off of no research, based off of no understanding, with no way to follow that kind of pathway. It just makes it really hard for everyone involved. Where the people standing up to say that I can solve this problem, kind of like politics, they're they're assholes. Like, I don't see a difference between Joe Biden or Donald Trump. From my perspective, they're just kind of both old, out of touch white men who don't have good ideas. But because of the way that they carry themselves, because of the way that they've made their careers to have all these networks and have all these connections, you become very stuck. So it's like the ideology, people like me, visually speaking, black men, it's like it feels like society is built in a way in which you have, like, I wouldn't say you have to work twice as hard per se, but it's like you have to carry yourself in such a different perspective that some of the best wisdom I've gotten has been from people that looked like me, that did not look like they had the answers, but they did. So I don't know. You hit the nail on the head for a lot of things that I deal with. But also the other side of the perspective is that sometimes you do have answers to society that you can't really share the answers with society because society doesn't want to hear you speak, you know? And that's just kind of what I dealt with. That's just kind of my perspective, especially being so young within the world. It's like, if you're too young, be quiet, go sit somewhere else. If you're a black man, go shut up, be quiet. If you're Latino and you don't fit the American paradigm and perspective, like I have some friends from Puerto Rico that don't feel right in America. They feel mistreated. They feel like I do. I have other friends who are from Colombia, from the Dominican Republic, who don't go through that whatsoever. That's not I'm not trying to insult any background or any beliefs. That's just what people
No,
and it's like, I don't know, it's weird. And it's like, if someone feels like they have something to say, I'm the type of person that's always going to listen and hear it out. I'm at least going to rate it and I'm going to sit down and measure it. But it's also like you're saying that people are afraid to ask questions or people are afraid to listen. People are also afraid to just like admit that something needs to be fixed, you know? It's kind of like you have a leaky faucet in your kitchen and it's going to cost you $80 that you don't want to spend to hire a plumber, or maybe more than $80. I never had a leaky faucet I needed to fix before, but I just get a ratchet and I fix it myself. But we have a lot of dire problems in this country that we need to fix. And we're called unpatriotic for wanting to fix these problems. We're told that we're not real Americans because we're addressing these issues here, or we're told to go back to our country for wanting to fix a lot of the things that an American system are abusive to other white people, as you might have been able to see for yourself, Linda. Like, there are a lot of white people living. Poverty isn't like a black issue. It's not an issue that immigrants are facing. It's an issue in large part that a lot of these well-to-do Americans are facing, that a lot of these people that are patriotic are facing, that if we can't fix it and we can't address it, nobody gets a solution. I don't know. It's like, I don't know, there's just a lot of things going on in this country and it all revolves around people kind of have like these presumptions of society. They have these kind of presumptions of how the other side lives. I know a lot of black people that just think for the sake of someone being white, this white person lives a far better life than they do. But I've never had a white friend tell me that, ever. You know, I know white people, not friends. I've known white people like that, but I've never had a friend. A lot of my friends that were white, I was in Pi Kappa Alpha, and Pi Kappa Alpha is usually, it's a fraternity for poor white guys, basically. Rural, farmland, kind of conservative belief white dudes. They wanted me to join because I was a part of I was a senator for campus at that time. So I got to see and be brothers with a lot of these people that, had I stayed in New Jersey, I would have never met before, but I've also would have never known they're raised by single mothers just like we are. You know, I would have never known that they come from generational poverty just like a lot of us do. And it's not a white versus black issue in America. It's advertised as a white versus black issue. It's advertised as an us versus them, like, kind of perception. But we're in so desperate need at a time right now of bridging bridges and bridging gaps and being able to connect with one another that, I don't know, I just felt like this show was one of the stepping stones, but there has to be something put in place there to have clear conversations. Like, and I just don't see it. I just see more of the confusion, more of the delusion, more of just taking advantage of people's like ignorance, I guess you would say. Sorry, I went on for quite a while there.
No, you hit it. You hit it right on the head. Go ahead, Linda.
I have a Christmassy shirt that says, Muslims love Jesus too. And I was walking down the sidewalk and passed a man, and all of a sudden he turned around and he said, Muslims love Jesus too. Muslims don't have the right to love Jesus. And I said, what? Why do you think that? And he said, Quran says all Jews must die. And I said, no, it doesn't. He says, well, that's not what I heard. I said, well, you need to read it for yourself.
Facts.
So,
But he's not going to.
No. And if he was open to learning more about the world, he would have asked me about Islam instead of just
asserting it,
living by these assumptions and what he's heard instead of really trying to find out.
That's really heartbreaking. It's, yeah, and I feel like we deal with that. Oh my God, like I'm really sorry that you had to deal with that, Linda. That's really
normal.
Oh my God, that like almost brought a tear to my eye. Like that really, because I can just imagine the way that some people are, and like they also have very violent responses and reactions as well sometimes. So I could have really seen that getting out of hand if you, I mean, you're a black belt, so I think you would have been able to protect yourself. But I don't know, like a lot of these people are just very belligerent in their ignorance. And that's my other point, is that you're usually stuck when you're in those situations of violence or the situations of arguing with somebody. It's usually someone who doesn't really know what the hell they're talking about.
I think if somebody is really content and feels safe in his or her own religion, he or she doesn't denigrate other religions. You have to feel secure in your own religion.
I think that's a major American issue, is that Americans are very insecure. And we suffer very deeply from like emotional trauma, from depression, and from bipolar disorder right now. And sadly, like a lot of suicide in this country. And instead of fixing it, instead of working on it, instead of addressing it, we just, I don't know, there seems to be a stigma attached to mental illness, but insecurity is like a major thing, financial insecurity, insecurity with just your relationships, or insecurity within your religious and spiritual beliefs, insecurity majorly within people's political beliefs. To have such a, again, I was a poli-sci major, so just seeing how people deal with politics and knowing how politics is meant to be ran and how it's meant to be utilized, it's like we create a world for ourselves where it's so much harder to find the solution than it is to find contradiction, than it is to find confrontation, or to find violence at times, because that pathway to be able to sit down and talk, to be able, or even just, I think the higher perspective would be to educate kids to have a background in Islam, have a background in Christianity. It's mandatory to have, where I went to college anyway, I'm not sure if it's the same with you, Omar, but it was mandatory to have a theology class, at least one of them,
for mine, it was.
Yeah, because we're trying to, I feel like some of us have witnessed and understood, if we just know a little bit more about what the other person believes, we can go a lot further. If I have no idea what you believe and I have no idea what you are willing to do to succeed in life, I'm just going to have any judgment or any perception of you that my negative mindset can enable me to have. And I feel like it's a lot more of that people fear more than they solve. I was going to go somewhere else with it, but this seems like a simpler way to put it, because when I try to explain myself, sometimes I go all over the place. But I definitely do. Like, people fear, and that fear and like it inhibits us from being able to fix that. It's been to 2005, so it's been about 15 years since 9/11, and we still don't have any real understanding about what Muslim people believe. We still don't have any real, and if you see the devastation, if you see what happened over there, like, it's horrific. 9/11 was tragic. It was bad. It was very sad. But if you remove all religion from the perspective and you just look at it as a loss of people, what we did in response to 9/11 is a far bigger. I don't want to get way too political in this because that's not really the idea of the show, but it's just reality. Like it's a far bigger tragedy that we lost about 10,000 people in New York, and that's horrific. That's really sad. But over the years since then, and again, I was in third grade, so I'm growing up with this, hundreds of thousands of people completely like, yeah, and now there's an issue in Europe right now that you have a lot of, I think they're Palestinian refugees. I'm not entirely sure, but you have a lot of people that have come from a lot of the war-torn regions that had nothing to do with 9/11, that have nothing to do with this war that's going on, that are completely displaced. And now they're in Europe and they're upset. There's no jobs for them. There's no opportunity for them. People don't understand their language. They don't understand their religion. And it's like you can embrace these people and you can find a place in society for them. Instead, you just get more fear mongering. You get more propaganda about the situation. And again, I just feel like it creates a lot more problems that once you bombed these people's homes and you destroyed where they lived, where did you expect them to go? You know, I just don't get it. I just really don't. But with that, here's my book. And I read about a lot of this stuff as well. Here's two of my books, actually. Best Friends and For the Crown of Nadia. For the Crown of Nadia actually talks a little bit, and I don't know, I guess I'll give you a side view. My books are huge. So my books are not that popular because I think Linda was saying something about a lot of people have like a sixth grade reading level. My books are not for people with a sixth grade reading level. You definitely have to be educated, as my girlfriend puts it, my wifey girlfriend. I've been calling her girlfriend a lot longer than I've been calling her a wife, so excuse me. But like you have to be a little bit more intelligent to like delve into my books and be able to understand them. So one of the topics in that is basically how, I don't know, again, I don't want the Illuminati or the FBI knocking on my door asking me questions, so I'm going to try to tiptoe around how I explain this. But basically one of the themes in the book is how banks have a vested interest in land, you know? So there's a lot of land, there's a lot of resources in certain areas of the world. And we just kind of seem to have conflict at around the same time that these banks are interested in buying the land. So those are one of the things that I write about in the book is that there's a global military called the regulator regime in my book. And the regulator regime basically wants world order, world peace by the edge of the blade. But at home, they're dealing with this issue that bankers are coming in from a different part of the world, and the bankers want the land, they want the resources, so they're having raiders come in, they're having barbarians come in, they're having like opposing militaries come in, they're having civil wars started, and issues amongst the people begin because the bankers want the land. And it's an unsolvable problem because the bankers are funding the military at the same way whether they're funding the opposition that the military is facing, all for the land. And there's no real way to connect the two because you have to follow the money trail. You have to be able to have a way to follow the transfer of money, the transfer of purchase, to be able to see the financial documentation for the purchase of these. But it's a very prevalent issue that a lot of these people are dying, a lot of these people are suffering, and it has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin, but it has everything to do with kind of labor. It has everything to kind of do with people want your money. So my books really aren't that popular because they are, but they aren't. I'm just dealing with a lot of major topics that I'm personally trying to solve, and I'm trying to use my books and romance to kind of, I don't know, from your perspective, I'm trying to use romance to hide these far deeper issues that I'm talking about. And I'm not sure that it's really preparing people when they read my books for what's inside of my books.
Well, I don't think you're the first. I mean, a lot of people do that, even in movies. Like they'll hide certain like themes or messages, like
Word.
in the movie, and like you'll have to like really pay attention to like, oh, hey, I think I know what the author or what the filmmaker is trying to tell me. So that's actually pretty clever. I commend you on that.
Actually,
Pretty
I
clever.
really don't want nobody knocking on my door.
That's what we call show, don't tell.
Facts. Biggest facts. So that's kind of what I read about. That's what my mindset's on. Do you guys have any other topics or ideas you want to bring up before let you guys go for the day?
Linda can go.
I just had a thought when we were talking about people's insecurities. You know, I don't only train in martial arts, I teach. I'm a 3rd degree black belt. And when I teach self-defense, one of the things I teach is how to avoid conflicts.
Facts.
And I tell people when you see somebody, you look that person straight in the face and smile and say hello, because from a self-defense position, that does 3 things. First, it lets him know that you see him and you can identify him if you need to. And second, it personalizes you to him, so he sees you more as a human being. But also, he realizes that you see him as a human being, and that may change his whole day.
Facts.
And Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, said, giving someone a smile is an act of charity. And a lot of times when I'm like in some place like Walmart and I have on hijab, somebody will stare at me like he wants to jump on me and beat me up, and I'll smile and say hello, and it changes his whole aura. And so it, I think it not only helps keep me from being a victim, but it helps that person. It changes his day.
I agree. That's like something I heard back in we had a speaker come in like back in high school, and they were talking about a man on like the golden. It's like exactly what you're talking about, Linda. There was a man one day that very sad. His depression kind of conquered him that day, and he wrote a suicide letter. And his suicide letter said, "If one person smiles at me today, I won't jump." And he walked from his home all the way to the Golden Gate Bridge. Nobody smiled at him. And now that guy's gone, and that like completely changed the way that I dealt with the entire world outside. If I would have never heard that story, I probably would have been a different person. But having dealt with depression, having dealt with feeling, like I told you, Omar, feeling kind of isolated outside of society, it's very easy to want to give in to hatred. It's very easy to want to get into negativity. Or I feel like some of the people I deal with on Facebook, they're just really nasty, very rude, just very egotistical people. And they don't have any like right or deserving to be. That if they could just go ahead.
They're in a space where they can be that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's all anonymous.
Behind a screen with a keyboard, you can be those things, you know, and most likely, you know, and if you see this person face to face, they're not that, you know, they're not so egotistical or they're not so brave, you know, I'll put it. But you know, it's whatever, you know. I don't let it you know, affect me too much, because I'm just gonna keep on doing my thing. And as long as I keep putting out a positive message, a message that I know will help people, then, you know, that's enough for me, to be honest, you know, because I know that somebody spreading a negative message, I know that message is not going to help people, you know. So I know that I'm at least more ahead of that person, you know, because I'm at least going to help people with struggles, with, you know, whatever they're dealing with, as opposed to that person that who's he or she going to help, being negative, you know, being so just, you know, down, and, you know,
and having to do so much, like Linda's saying about security and insecurity, having to do so much of that to kind of make up for what doesn't exist inside of the real world. I like your maturity in dealing with that. I hope I get to reach your level of emotional maturity someday soon. So
you'll learn. So with my book, so this one right here is like, book one, and that's my childhood and teenage years. So it's going to be a series. So book two, you'll learn more about, I guess you'll see my emotional journey. That book is more about things that I dealt with on a more emotional level, So maybe you'll see how I
Absolutely.
gained that emotional maturity that I guess that I'm exuding.
Absolutely.
But
And I don't know, it's really important for young men to see as well, because emotionality is not something that I think it would probably be one of the purest things that we can introduce for young men, is to give them some basis to deal with emotions, to deal with other people's emotions without feeling as if emotionality makes you weak or makes you feel like it's one of the greatest forms of strength that you can have, is being able to understand
yeah,
how you feel and then acting based off of that. And that's just was not something in I don't know. It's just something I had to figure out myself. It wasn't something that any form of institution, even going to therapy, it wasn't even something that therapy really had to offer. Because if I didn't have the emotional disturbance, they weren't being paid. um, that's all for me. If you guys have anything else, I'm definitely here for another 20 minutes for you. But if you guys want to get out of here 20 minutes early, I have no issue with that. I pray that we all still stay connected. Definitely add each
yeah.
other. I'm going to give you an invitation to the Multicultural Writers Collective, which Linda is also a member of, and really can't wait to have you there.
Okay.
But just thank you guys. Thank you, Omar, for having your perspective of the world and being the calmer of like, not that anything got like really, I just really admire. There's like a saying that like a true king lets everyone else speaks before he introduces his perception. So I really appreciate you like acting that out. Linda, thank you so much for your perspective of the universe, for your wisdom and very scientific mindset and how you're coming to these conclusions and ideas and theories about the nature of God and how he interacts with us mere mortals. So thank you guys.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I really enjoy.
I love this. I absolutely love this conversation. If you guys just want to flash your books one more time for people, and if you have any social media handles, anywhere you want people to contact you, please let them know now. Do you have all your
Linda,
books there,
Linda can
Linda?
go first.
This is Ramadan Rhapsody. It's a daily devotional for Ramadan. And
That's
I
very
have
nice.
this children's book where the ghost camel grins. And it has, if you like art, it has, I'm also an illustrator. So this has 46 of my illustrations.
Hold it a little longer because your network is kind of going in and out, so it makes the image
Okay.
look foggy. And if you could show us the cover one more time. That's a beautiful cover.
Thank you.
And that's a children's book?
Fables. It's a book of fables.
Nice. It's beautiful. So where can people contact you on social media?
I'm on
Linda can go.
Facebook, and my books are all on Amazon.
Okay. And the link for that will definitely be in the description. Omar, how about you?
So yeah, Facebook at j.o.gonzalez, IG, Instagram at JoshJoe20, and Twitter at doc_OmarG. And then yeah, my book is on Amazon.
And if you guys can message that to me, I'll put the link below in the description.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you two so much for coming on. I did not expect this conversation to take all the turns that it did, but hopefully we are bridging a major gap to help people know that with this, we're not just writing books. We really are trying to connect people. We really are trying to change the world through this. And it's only through having these discussions with people from different backgrounds, from different perceptions of the reality, that that's even remotely possible.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. And that's all. When I end the meeting, that's it. So bye guys. Have a wonderful
All
day.
right. See ya.
See you guys. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Go get my cake, I ain't taking no pay cut, know that I'm wildin'. It's time to wake up, and go get my cake up, I don't break up the makeup, know that I'm out here.